All right, let's find the best quality meats and the best kinds of meats, ranging from poultry, beef, fish, whatever, that is at Trader Joe's right now. Now, they change their selection all the time, so we're gonna have a little bit of fun. Now, we generally don't get kicked out of Trader Joe's. We're in, I don't know, pretty nice connections with Trader Joe's, and they're great people, but you never know, we might get kicked out. So what we'll probably do is keep it somewhat discreet. I'll do some explanation while we're in Trader Joe's, and if we have to bring it back to the studio kitchen, do some more explanation to go deep into science, we will, because you're gonna learn about what these foods are doing inside your body, not just what's in the ingredient label, all right? So before we dive into all the details of this video, I do want to make sure you hit that red subscribe button and then hit that little bell icon. That way you're never missing a beat. We're having new videos coming out almost every single day, whether they're grocery hauls, whether they're educational, whether they're meal plan videos, all to help you get in the best shape. I was 280 pounds at one point, and I want you to know that you can make the change too. Let me show you something real quick. After you watch this video, give these guys a try. So if you're doing a low carb diet or anything like that, Fat Snacks just sent me a ton of these. These are awesome, like keto cookies. Okay, so super, just easy, just to, I don't know, keep along with you. Obviously, I don't keep this whole box in my car because I'm gonna eat all of them. I'm taking them to the office so we can get some good footage of them. But I put a link down below for Fat Snacks. If you're doing a low carb diet or anything like that, you wanna check them out, you're gonna love them. All right, let's head on into the store. Let's get some of that coronavirus. Pretty quiet here, it's nice. Right. So, trying to break this up into categories so we can save a little bit of time. I do full grocery hauls, obviously have other videos that are probably showing up in the suggested feed and stuff, but I want to focus on the meat and do a little bit of explanation because Trader Joe's has some interesting things here. Okay, let's talk poultry for a second. When you look at ground chicken versus ground turkey, they have some good selections, but ground turkey is it usually has a lot more in the way of antibiotics and a lot more in the way of things. Now, when we look at this one in particular, I don't see anything that says no antibiotics used. So this is a little bit scary on this one. Okay, it's 99% lean. Now, the one thing we do have to remember is that toxins and poisons, pesticides, things like that, not necessarily in this case, right, are stored in fat. Okay, so hormones, everything like that gets stored in fat. So the leaner the meat, the safer, especially with poultry, because poultry has generally a tendency to have much higher antibiotics and things like that. But this doesn't even say antibiotic free. So this one's a little scary. So this Norbest one is a little sketch. I get this ground chicken every now and then because this ground chicken, it's pretty darn lean, 8% fat, no antibiotics, all vegetarian diet, no added hormones. Chicken is almost invariably going to be fed soy, so you can't really get around that. However, if it's at least organic soy, it helps you out a little bit. But yeah, you are going to get what the chicken ate. So yes, soy, so use it in moderation. But the fatty acid profile of chicken is better than turkey. So when you're looking for any kind of ground poultry, opt for the chicken. Just don't everyone go out and buy it because I like to buy it. And if you end up wiping out the stores, then what am I gonna eat? Just kidding. All right, so I'm gonna get one of these. Okay, so here's what's interesting, is when I look at the 93% lean, it says no antibiotics ever, but on the 99% lean turkey, it doesn't say that. So what's wild is that the 93% has a little bit more fat in it, but there's no antibiotics. So that's a plus. That means when there is a higher fat content, we don't have the antibiotics. So I wonder if they figured this one's so lean that they didn't need to put they didn't even need to worry about the antibiotics. But then, well, what's interesting, ooh, look at this price difference. So $4.99 for the no antibiotics ever, and $3.49 for, I guess, antibiotic rich. That's kind of scary. And then we have $5.69 for organic ground, still no antibiotics. Okay, so price-wise, what is your best bang for the buck? I don't think organic is going to matter with this meat because they're probably still fed soy, and USDA organic doesn't really excite me. It doesn't mean that much to me. I care more about what they ate. So I think bang for the buck, this ground turkey, well then again though, it's 69 more cents to get organic. So I'm gonna, yeah, get organic. But again, you have to remember the fatty acid profile of poultry is just not that good, so you should try to go lean whenever you can. And if you're gonna get like meat that has a high degree of fat in it and stuff like that, I don't know. So that's just a little bit of take on the ground chicken section. This is usually my go-to. Let's jump over to pork for a second. So pork has a really high polyunsaturated fatty acid content, which is great because PUFAs, P-U-F-A, are really good fats. The problem is that they get denatured under high heat really well. Okay, well, I shouldn't say well, badly. What do we usually cook, like when we're looking at bacon or we're looking at breakfast sausage? We usually cook it and we want it crispy. That is a problem because then we take these polyunsaturated fats that are very fragile, okay, they get denatured, they get broken down in high heat, and they become toxic in high heat. That happens a lot. So I've done videos on this, but if you're going to go with like a breakfast sausage, this is just ground pork sausage, but if breakfast sausage over bacon, I really think you should opt for the bacon. Okay, because the bacon is more of a saturated fat, less the polyunsaturated. This is lower saturated fat, which at first glance will seem better, but we actually want the bacon because it's higher saturated, which is actually a safer, more stable fat. So pork is a really difficult thing because they're usually given a lot of antibiotics. Trader Joe's is awesome because they don't use much in the way of antibiotics. And when you look at the different cuts, I like pork loin chops because this big ribbon of saturated fat is A, easy to trim off if you want to get rid of it, but B, it's saturated, so you can cook it at a higher temperature, you can broil it and things like that, and you're not going to break it down that much because it's just saturated. And the saturated fats like stearic acid and things like that, those are actually good fats that are very, very critical for cholesterol function, for testosterone function within the body if you're a male. Females, the science is a little bit more inconclusive. Let's grab some pork, but I think in this case, I'm going to go for, okay, so this is Frenched, so just slightly different cuts. Look at the difference in the meat there. So one is darker, obviously you're gonna have more iron in that. That just means that it's a different area of the pig slightly. I like this kind, I like just a regular boneless center cut. So I'm gonna go for that. The pork is okay, so no antibiotics ever, no added hormones. You have to be really careful with pork. Okay, let's talk salmon for just a second, and then we'll jump over to some beef and things like that. Very important, this is what I like. Trader Joe's has amazing options with wild salmon. Okay, you just have to look for it. And their wild salmon is usually sockeye. People get thrown off. Let me show you this really quick. Fresh Atlantic salmon. Okay, so you look at this and it's so easy to think, okay, it's fresh and it's Atlantic. Well, if it's Atlantic, it's gotta be fresh from the Atlantic. No, it's not like that. Okay, this is Norwegian farm raised. Okay, doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad just because it's farm raised. There are some sustainable forms, but the Norwegian salmon is notorious for just being higher fat content, but very low antioxidant content. Okay, I want you to look at the difference between these two. So one would say, oh, well, it's just because one's a sockeye, one's an Atlantic, different fatty acid profile considering where they're from and things like that. Sockeye is usually in a slightly colder water, but sockeye ends up being lower fat content. However, that deep redness is something called astaxanthin, which is a really cool antioxidant that is pretty unique to sockeye salmon. And it can cross the blood-brain barrier and add a layer of protection to the brain, but it's also just, it has like 20 different things that it can neutralize at once. Word to the wise, like when you eat sockeye salmon, eat the scales. I know it can be gross, but that vitamin D that you're gonna get from those scales is huge for belly fat reduction, huge for testosterone, because you need, you have vitamin D receptors in your hypothalamus, your pituitary, you have them in your Leydig cells, and it's amazing stuff. So look at this sockeye versus this fresh Atlantic, which is not really wild. We're gonna go for that. And the cool thing is, it's actually a good price. That's really not bad. That comes out to, it's what, $11.99, $12.99, $12 a pound. Not bad at all. Could do a whole separate video on the smoked salmon area. But I think we're gonna save that for another video because there's too much going on here, and I wanna make this all about like kind of the fresh meats and things like that. People do ask about ribs all the time. The thing with ribs, again, you're looking at a high saturated fat content, but what you wanna look at is total fat over saturated fat. These are actually relatively lean ribs. I would prefer a higher saturated fat content because again, it would be more stable. It would be more stable. And you're gonna cook ribs usually pretty low and slow, so you're not cooking them at a really high temperature. So you're probably okay, and it's not as big of a deal. This is something to pay attention to. Okay. Just waiting for some people so we're not in their way. Okay. I don't care who you are, unless you are just going to town and you just wanting to enjoy some food, I usually recommend not having chicken with the skin. Okay, so the skin, you're getting a bunch of the free fatty acids that are just lower quality in the chicken. What I mean by that is, if you compare chicken to beef, the fatty acid profile that you're getting out of beef is going to be much more conducive to producing ketones, much more conducive to brain health, much more conducive to omega-3s and heart health, whereas the fatty acid profile of poultry, of chicken, is just not good. And guess what? That skin is very high in fat. So if you're doing a ketogenic diet or a low-carb diet, you usually want to have the fat content, but people think, oh, well, I'm just going to get some chicken thighs, or I'm going to get some chicken drumsticks, and things like that. And guess what? You end up with low-quality fats. Are they going to hurt you? No, but long-term, that's not what you want. So if they have drumsticks that don't have the skin, you can go for those. But if you go for chicken thigh, same kind of deal. Go for chicken thigh that is organic, free range, and go for ones that do not have the skin on them. Dark meat isn't all that much higher fat content. It's really not that bad. See, here's boneless, skinless thighs, 8 grams. So, I mean, yes, it's higher fat than regular chicken breast, but it's not that bad. It's really not, because it's darker because it is a muscle of the chicken that has more oxidation, it has more blood flow going through it. So we just got to be careful with the fat content that you can see, but don't worry about it being a little bit darker. Point is though, go lean whenever you can. As soon as I'm not in people's way, I'm going to show you a little bit more about the chicken breast here. Here we go. Chicken breast, same kind of thing. Don't get the fryers, okay? Not that they're bad, but we just don't want them. We just don't want those fats. Whenever you're going for any kind of protein, it's better to go leaner. Okay, this is valuable information here. The leaner, the better. I know that it tastes good to go with high fat content, I understand, but lean, what you can do is then you can control the fat that you're putting on it. So for example, I cooked this lean chicken breast that has a couple grams of fat tops, and then I could make my own sauce with coconut oil, with healthy mayonnaise, with avocado oil, with avocados, and then I can control the healthy fats that are coming in, and I'm not reliant on fats that are coming through the meat that might be totally adulterated by how many grains these things ate. I don't want a bunch of, type 1 and type 3 prostaglandins getting elevated and having an inflammatory response in my body because I'm ultimately consuming grains and soy. Those things are stored in the fat. Get the lean. This is the chicken that I usually get from TJ's. Okay, same kind of thing with these when you start getting into the whole chickens, stuff like that. You do get some benefit because you get more of the vitamin D, you get more of those things that are going to come through with that. So that's all good. So this is the reason this is the chicken that I usually get is price-wise, $5.99 a pound, and we're in California, mind you, so California prices are going to be inflated, but $5.99 a pound for organic chicken is really good. Like I go to Ralph's, I'll go to Vaughn's, things like that, and I'm looking at $7.99, $8.99 for like air chilled, and this is a good price. So I recommend this one. People will often take a look at what's the difference between the organic and the natural. $1.50 a pound difference, and realistically, I mean, you're not spending much more to get the organic. The thing that I get concerned with is I know this is lean, but you have to remember that the chickens, they're consuming so much soy that if you're going to consume a lot of chicken, it's going to be an integral part of your diet. What you have to remember is you're going to have this phytoestrogen response, okay, from the chicken. Chickens are eating soy, which is a phytoestrogen. You are what you ate. You remember that. You are what you ate. So if you're eating a lot of chicken, you're consuming a lot of soy. So go for the organic. It's just a little bit better, and it's only $1.50 a pound more, and realistically, you're probably only going to consume a few pounds a week. So, I mean, it's a couple bucks. They also have these that are just individually wrapped. So these are a little bit easier if you're traveling, or not like you're going to bring this with you on a plane, but I mean, if you're going to someone's house and you want to bring a piece of chicken to cook and things like that. But they charge quite a bit more, $1 more per pound just to have them individually wrapped, and I don't know, not that cool of a deal. Okay, let's jump to ground beefs for a second. Okay, so when you look at ground beef, I don't know if this lady, she's doing it. Here, I'll just let her go for a second. Okay, same rule applies with ground beef. So this organic ground beef is 100% grass-fed, but it's not grass-finished. So the grass-fed doesn't really matter to me because grass-fed just means that at some point in the cow's life, it ate grass. It doesn't mean that it was finished on grass. And what matters is the last 30 days, what the cow was really eating. So if the cow was raised on grass and then was moved over to grain to fatten it up for the last 30 days to go to harvest, which is what happens, I'm basically getting all the stuff that's still in the grain, even though it was grass-fed. So I like this as organic and grass-fed, that's great. but it doesn't really get me excited, okay? What I get more excited about is the fact that they have a 96% lean beef, which you don't find many places. And it's a good price, $5.49 a pound. Usually the leaner you get, the more expensive it gets. That's natural, okay? Like they're $4.99 for 85, but like here, so that means, yes, it's not organic, and no, it's not grass-fed, but it still has the grains, but that fat content is so low, you're not gonna find that in beef otherwise. So the actual impact on my body with what actually ends up getting consumed is less with this than it is with this. I get more negative impact from this because of how high in fat it is, along with the grains that are ultimately still in it, than I would with paying less money for a very lean meat. And then if I needed to add more fats to it, cook a little, put a little ghee in it, put a little bit of fat that you can trust, and you have a perfect fat, right? So go for that guy. Let's jump over to steaks for just a second too. Same kind of thing with ribeyes. When you're shopping for red meat in general, it's better to go for the lean ones unless you know exactly what you're after. Now, a ribeye is going to be good, but it's higher fat, right? So with a ribeye, I would look for something that is going to be at least, well, at least no antibiotics. But I don't know if I see one here. Oh, here we do. We have a grass-fed organic ribeye. Okay, so if you're going for a high-fat food, where your options are high fat in general, right? So with a ribeye, you're gonna have high fat or you're gonna have high fat. There's no option between the two. So I have a ribeye here, which is high fat, or I have a ribeye here, which is high fat. Might as well go for the organic one, because at this point, it's apples to apples. Whereas here, this was apples to oranges, in my opinion. Whereas this is apples to apples. So might as well go for the organic one, if that makes sense. Now, $13.49 a pound versus $13.90, wait, what? Am I reading that right? $13.99 a pound, yeah. And $13.49. It's cheaper per pound for the grass-fed ribeye, so I'm going for that, hands down. Okay, strip steak, in my opinion, I actually think strip steak, like a New York, has better flavor than a ribeye. Ribeye, I just think you just get roped into all the fat. I don't know, but that's just me. I know people will disagree. It's kind of funny. Atkins Ranch. I wonder if it's keto. This is lamb. Now, lamb and mutton have one of the best omega-3 profiles that are out there, believe it or not. So when you look at any kind of meat, like red meat, lamb, things like that, you talk about the omega-3 content. And the omega-3 content, although very important, like grass-fed is going to be better, it's so negligible. There's such a small amount of omega-3s. People will argue, does it really matter? It's less about the omega-3s and more about the omega-6s, okay? So you have this, like, what I call interstitial space of fats, right? You have omega-3s, you have omega-6s, and then you have like the rest of the fatty acids. Omega-3s are going to be higher in something grass-fed, like lamb and mutton and stuff like that. But the most important thing is that omega-6s are lower. Don't care about the omega-3s as much. I care more about the omega-6s being lower, and there's just other random healthy fats that are in there. I know that sounds like gobbledygook, and I can explain it more, but the point is that lamb and mutton is actually very, very good when it comes. The point is that lamb and mutton is actually very, very good. Good quality omega-3, which has been shown to trigger muscle protein synthesis 50% higher. So if you're eating this, you might just potentially get more protein synthesis out of it. I have a lamb leg or a lamb loin chop. Again, I'm gonna go for the lamb leg, okay? It's actually cheaper, same price per pound, and I'm paying for less fat, and I'm paying for more, just a lean cut. Okay, let's go ahead and let's talk bacon for just a second, because it's starting to get a little crowded here and I don't want to upset people. Bacon could have its own category, could have its own section, but what I really want to talk about here is, generally speaking, bacon is going to be good. It's half of it is saturated fat, and that's the ratio that I look at here. Okay, half of the total fat, 3 grams, 1.5 grams, is saturated fat, which tells me that the good majority of the fat is a stable fat that can be heated at high temperature. A hot tip with bacon is what you want to do is you want to cook it in oil. You don't want to cook it in its own fat, because what that does is it allows heterocyclic amines and it allows what are called advanced glycation end products to form. And we just want to be careful with that, because advanced glycation end products are what can cause cancers and what can cause a lot of illnesses in the body. I've done other videos on it. I'll link them down below. I don't want to spare the waste of time right now. Point is saturated fat is designed to be cooked. It can handle a high temperature. Okay, It's the one time that we don't want to have these unsaturated fats, and we know we're going to be cooking it at a moderately high temperature. So this bacon, when I compare it, that's what I want you to look at, is the ratio of, okay, so like this one, the uncured turkey bacon. First of all, it's turkey bacon, which is going to be lower quality to begin with, but 1.5 grams total fat, 0.5. So we've got 30% of it is saturated fat, so we don't want that. And then, what's this one? Uncured, dry rubbed. Ooh, okay, 6 grams, 2 grams of it saturated. So again, 30% of it's saturated fat. This is kind of cool. Oh, this is kind of nice. Low sodium. This is cool. Dry rubbed, uncured. 5 grams. Okay, a little bit better fat. 5 grams total fat. 2 grams of it saturated. Okay. We're still winning here. 7 grams total fat. 2.5 grams saturated. Not the greatest ratio. Once again, curious on these ends and pieces here, because these look like you see more fat in it. Like, right? Lots of saturated fat there. 3 grams, 1 gram. No, we got a winner. Okay, and this, I just pulled this off the shelf randomly. So here we, once again, 3 grams total fat, 1.5 of it saturated. Higher ratio of saturated fat to total fat. Don't worry about the protein, doesn't matter. You're not eating bacon for protein, it's for flavor. So this is the winner here. Okay. This one's kind of cool. I mean, it's just cool because it's like already cooked, but it's still not the best fat ratio. I mean, I'd live with it. I don't like they add turbinado sugar to it. I don't think this one has any sugar in it. This one does have raw sugar. So we got to weigh that into the equation. I thought that this one was a no sugar one. So this is going to be the next best bet. Okay, so pork, sea salt, allspice, sunflower oil. Why did they do that? Okay, so here's a good thing, right? I have to weigh this out. Do I take the risk from the sugar, which isn't even enough to add a carbohydrate, or do I take the risk from the sunflower oil? I would honestly say that I think the sugar is going to get cooked out. When I cook this tiny bit of sugar is probably gonna get cooked out. The sunflower oil is gonna oxidize and go through lipid peroxidation and probably do more damage in my body than this. How wild is that, right? I hate sugar. I mean, but I will honestly think that this one might be a little bit better. I mean, they're probably pretty darn equal. We're getting pretty granular here, no pun intended. All right, let's go buy this stuff and get out of here. The quietest they'll ever. You know what? Actually, stop really quick. Beep, 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 beep. I have to give a big nod to Trader Joe's and their frozen fish department. Frozen fish, frozen meats. I will tell you, it's where it's at. It really is. If you can deal with defrosting, this is where it's at. They have a huge selection here, and then you can even get down to, let's see, they've got coho salmon. I don't know if this is, yeah, wild salmon. They've got wild coho salmon, and which you don't find in a lot of places, for $10.99 a pound frozen. And remember, it's flash frozen. So when you get things that are frozen, you're getting them frozen at the source. And when you're talking about a fishing vessel that's going to be out for a couple days, couple weeks, you want it frozen and you want it to stay frozen. This isn't really a fish video, so I'm not gonna spend a lot of time here. I just wanted to give a big nod to this because they really rock with it. They have a good shrimp selection. There's no connective tissue in shrimp, so it digests really easy. Same kind of thing with scallops, okay? Mollusks and crustaceans, one of the best protein sources, best abundant amino acid profile sources you can find. Anyway, we need to do a frozen meat section video. If you guys want to see that, put it down below in the comment section and we'll do that. Because there's a lot of stuff we can do there. These guys are awesome. They count too. I'm getting one. What's up, dude? You're gonna be famous again.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's a meat video. It's the best meats at Trader Joe's video this time.
Really? We do have good meats.
You do, man. Ethically, I feel a little weird eating lamb. The fact that you guys have a 96% lean ground beef is epic, because you can't find it anywhere.
Let me ask you this, like when I get the 80-20 because I like all the fat and stuff in there, but I take it and I just smash all the grease out of it.
Yeah.
I take it, like put it in a colander and smash all the grease. Is it any beneficial? Is it
Yeah, I mean, you're losing,
like
you never know which fats you're losing, you know, like, especially when it's like cold. I mean, it's like, you're probably just losing much of the like saturated fat that's like doing some, quite frankly, good stuff for you anyway. I don't know, I always keep it lean and then just add my fats from avocado, so cool. See you, man. $81 of meat, but I don't know. That ribeye looks pretty darn good. Let's see. If you're polite and you buy things and you don't get in the way of customers, they're pretty cool with you filming. So big shout out to Trader Joe's because they're cool. Unlike some other stores that will not be mentioned that consistently kick us out when we do helpful videos. So I hope that you got some benefit from this video. If you did, comment down below, but let me know what other kind of departments of the grocery store you want me to target, right? If you want me to do dairy, if you want me to do frozen, if you want me to do the nut section, I'd love to be able to do more physiological breakdown. You guys all know my buddy Bobby over at Flav City. He does a lot in the way of like the ingredient stuff, like talks about like, here's the healthiest choice for XYZ. I like to break it down in terms of what's gonna do inside your body and what's gonna get you more of a fat burning effect and stuff like that. So that way you can know both sides of the equation. So don't forget to follow Bobby too, he's awesome. As always, keep it locked in here on my channel. See you soon.